got a couple of things I wanted to mention. I'm just going to break with, we're going to talk a little bit more about primaries and politics and the like during the course of this hour of the show. But just a couple of things that came across this morning. Um, and I guess they are related to what we've been talking about. What do they call it? Tangentially, ancillary, whatever. There's some big words that people use out there. You can tell I've been reading George Will's column. It's 9:07. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, newsradio1310.com. This notion that Donald Trump is somehow endorsing the Ku Klux Klan and David Duke and all of that. Uh, this is the latest. It's being fed by Republicans as much as it's being fed by, because they're trying to figure out, okay, we've got this beast here. We got to do anything we can to get rid of this beast. But we had a caller yesterday who referenced the KKK getting together in Southern California, Orange County, which is, I guess, one of the last Republican bastions in Southern California. If you go out into the San Joaquin Valley, actually, you'll find a lot of Republicans like the legendary Congressman Tom McClintock, people like that. But in Southern California, it is really a Democrat stronghold, and most of the people live there, and they control the politics of the state. But Orange County, that was where Ronald Reagan's real base of support was back when he really got started in politics 50 years ago. So a rally took place there. You had some people who claimed they were Klansmen and they were carrying Confederate flags, and they weren't wearing white robes. I guess, that's just, it makes it difficult to see when you got the hood on and you're trying to cross the street. They were having a rally there, and they were saying that white lives matter. In other words, it was a response to this Black Lives Matter business where let's divide and conquer with everyone. And we had some things get out of hand. The initial story was that someone used the point of a flag, one of the Klansmen, to stab somebody, a counter-demonstrator who came out. Well, here's the latest from the Daily Caller. KKK members acted in self-defense in Anaheim fight. That comes from the police. 6 men dressed in shirts with Klan and Confederate flag insignia arrived Saturday in Anaheim to display White Lives Matter signs. Then 10 to 20 anti-Klan protesters also showed up and started violently attacking the Klansmen, who responded by stabbing 3 protesters. Regardless of an individual or group's beliefs or ideologies, they are entitled to live without the fear of physical violence and have the right under law to defend themselves when attacked, according to a police statement. So in other words, if Lefty hadn't had to go out there and pick a fight, Lefty wouldn't have been stabbed. These guys would have held up their signs, waved their flags for a while, and then they would have gone home, and it would have been all over. When I was a young television reporter, 1993, I was working for a CBS TV affiliate in Syracuse, New York. And I had spent most of my years living in that part of the state, living in a smaller city about 25 miles away called Auburn. Auburn was about the size of Twin Falls. And Auburn had a much more blue-collar type of reputation. And there was a guy who lived near Auburn who decided to invite a bunch of his racist skinhead friends, and they all decided to come together and have a rally one Saturday, summer Saturday, on the steps of Auburn City Hall. Now, like a lot of cities in the Rust Belt, on a Saturday, you can find no one around the City Hall because they're all out at the mall on the margins, the ends of town. And the downtown area was just dead. There was nothing going on. It's like a lot of small towns in Idaho. You get people downtown on Monday through Friday because they're paying bills and they're going into the local offices. But on Saturday, there was going to be nobody there. So it was going to be a couple of dozen guys who were going to show up with their Klan insignia and their white power, and they were going to show up and they were going to stand on the steps of City Hall when no one was there and hold a rally for an hour or two and then leave. Except they started busing in lefties from New York City, which was about 5 hours away. They were busing these people in to hold a counter demonstration, and I was sent out there with a photographer to cover the story. I nearly got my head crushed by a rock that day. People were throwing cinder blocks. They had to load the Klansmen and the skinheads into police vans to get them out of town safely. And I was standing next to one of the police vans when one of the lefties threw a cinder block to smash the window out of the van, and it nearly hit my head. It was an incredible experience to be stuck in the middle of a near riot like that. But if the lefties had never showed up, these guys would have held their rally, and then they would have gone home. And that would have been the end of it. There is a line I had years ago, a fellow, he's an author by the name of, he writes for WorldNet Daily, Phil Elmore. Phil Elmore is a friend of mine. We've known each other now for about a dozen years. And Phil was on my radio show in studio one day, and I was talking with him about self-defense issues. He writes a lot about self-defense. And Phil said he's in fact, I think his website is called The Martialist because his background in martial arts is extensive. And Phil said, you'll often hear the old phrase, "How do I stay out of bar fights?" It's a question, but it's a phrase. That comes up. He said the simple answer to that is don't go into bars. So if you don't want to be stabbed by a Klansman, then don't show up at the Klan rally and confront him and try to beat him up. The Klansman may decide to defend himself. 912, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It is not yet illegal in America to have a different opinion, even if that opinion is unpopular. 913, it's 40. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Telephone number 736-0300, 736-0300. We have a caller with us. You're up next, and you're on the air.
Yeah, Bill, yesterday afternoon I was listening to Beck and Levin, and and they were both just having a fit about Trump. And my attitude is, well, maybe you should get him on your show and say, okay, this is how we feel. Now, maybe he won't go on the show. But you see, this division is killing us. And I just can't see how Trump is not going to be the nominee. I just don't see it happening. I guess Beck and Levin are holding out hope. And I respect Levin immensely. Beck, he can be all over the map, and lately he seems to have lost his mind. I mean it. And a lot of my friends feel the same way. But you see, this is the thing. Let's talk to Mr. Trump. Let's explain to him what we're thinking and see if we can hold his feet to the fire a little. He's always seemed like a reasonable man. I could be wrong, but we've got to win. And when Jeff Sessions, like you said yesterday, endorsed Trump, that means a lot to me. So that's all I had. Thanks, Bill.
And I'm a big fan of Jeff Sessions as well. And Sessions' point is we've got to do something about that border. If you look at the Drudge Report this morning, one of the headlines near the top of the page, just below the main headline, it's on the left-hand side, at least it was just before I went on air, says we are seeing a record number of illegal entries into this country this year. Folks, it's March 1st. When does it end? The people of this country are crying out for deliverance. We're told that free trade is good for us. Well, maybe it is if it's fair trade. I don't know that I could explain what currency manipulation is all about, but that's what the Chinese are guilty of doing. That's not free trade. I hear the words, and I know it's bad for us, especially if I'm an American worker, and I've got to compete with that. I know that's bad. I also know it's bad when I go in looking for a job, and I've been working hard all my life, and I'm told that Esteban or Jose will do the job for about a tenth of what I've been doing it. And well, hey, he's a hard worker and Americans don't really want these jobs. But I want that job. I'm an American. I'm sick to death of hearing all of that. That's what this year is all about. And the elitists have been saying, no, this is good for everybody. You can come over here and compete to mow my lawn with Jose and Esteban. How is that good for me? That's the part that, while you're jetting all over the world, my children and my grandchildren have no future anymore. You've just sold them down the river, and then you've claimed it's going to help me out. Well, it will in another 100 years. I'm sorry, but I don't have that long. 9:15, Bill Colley with you. It's 40. You're up next. You're on KLIX.
Good morning, Bill. I was just on the phone with my brother yesterday from Colorado, and he is for Trump. And I tried to find out why and explain to him a lot of the things about Trump that's just flat dangerous. And he's a carpet layer, and he says, I'm being killed here. I'm being killed here by illegal immigrants. The illegal immigrants are coming in here, and you got a couple of legals that hire a bunch of illegals and doing the work for half the price that sometimes have to be redone after they're finished because they didn't do a good job. But yet he's starving because you can't even get work done at rates that are supposed to be there. They're only paying their workers $5 an hour. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So his campaign of getting on the radio and getting his voice out is working. Everybody's campaign against him is laying on deaf ears.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
It's just not working.
I thank you much for the call. I had an uncle who moved to Escondido, California in the 1950s and opened up a floor and wall business. And he was very successful. I mean, he actually, worked for Lucille Ball putting in carpeting in her home. It helped, by the way, that they were from the same hometown in Western New York State, and that small world. Lucy happened to know my grandmother when she was a very little girl. But Uncle Walt had a very successful and thriving business in California for many, many years. He wouldn't be able to do that again today because he'd have somebody undercutting him who came across the border in the dark of night or in a tunnel or in the back of a truck or in the carriage of a truck. And somebody would say, well, you got to learn to live with that. What about the rule of law? Well, we can be flexible here. We liberals don't believe in that sort of thing. And, it's only good when it comes to killing babies. We have to make sure that's legal. In other words, your thinking and your traditions don't matter. Our new set over here, they do, and you've just got to shut up and accept it. This year is about not accepting it. Speaking of David Duke, look, if you've got black supremacists running around saying fry police, pigs in a blanket, kill cop, kill cop, kill cop, and no one condemns Hillary Clinton for seeking their support, why is Trump hammered for David Duke? This is David Duke speaking with Alan Combs, liberal Alan Combs on the Combs radio program.
I think, a very biased media try to make an issue. And we'll talk about how that they're really smearing Donald Trump unfairly, and I think with a lot of deception. I call myself is a human rights activist, but I believe human rights must be accorded to all people, all heritages, and all nations. And I believe that European Americans, I think that the government of our country is embarked on a purposeful program to destroy the European American people in America by making us a tiny minority in the nation that our forefathers created.
Now, people are going to say, oh, that racist human being, that terrible man, did you hear what he just said? Look, the Scot-Irish and the Scottish came to this country, and then later some Germans and Poles and Italians, and they built the greatest industrial power the world had ever seen. And they raised their children, and they were able to work hard and send children off to college, or the children were able to go find work as well. They could buy houses. They could afford those houses. They could afford to feed their children, clothe their children. All of these things were the American dream. If you fly over America now between the coasts, or you go into the old Rust Belt, into Holyoke, Massachusetts, Buffalo, New York, Toledo, Ohio, and you look around and you see what's happened there, and then they wonder why the deaths of white Americans, why the lifespan of white America has suddenly dropped over the last 30 years. I mean, it has dropped like a stone that you throw into a creek. There are reasons for all of that. My hometown is nothing but a hollowed-out shell of what it used to be. And it is just sad to go back there and see what it looks like now. And that's because of American policy. Every last factory is closed and gone to Mexico or China or Malaysia. And you wonder why we're ticked off? Give me a break. One of your telephone calls on the way in just a moment on News Radio 1310 KLIX. Here's a simple question, because you hear hate, 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 hate. These people hate, 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 hate. Trump's people hate, 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 hate. All right. Why does my government hate people like me? Why does academia hate people like me? Why, when my children who happen to have paler skin look for work, why do they have to stand in line and wait behind everyone else so the quota's filled out? Why do you hate us? Just because a guy who looked like me 300 years ago was mean to somebody who looked like you 300 years ago, I am not responsible. It's 9:24. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Do want to pass along quickly my regards to our friends at Mount Harrison Audiology. That's in Rupert, Idaho, 1218 9th Street, Unit number 2. And it's the home of Dr. Christine Pickup, a doctor of audiology. You can also find her at Mount Harrison. Let me try that one more time. You can also find the doctor at MountHarrisonAudiology.com. Her telephone number 208-312-0957. Did you know that the health of the inner ear is affected by your cardiovascular and kidney health? The inner ear is very sensitive to changes in your blood supply. If you've had recent heart problems or kidney problems, you should have your hearing checked today. Telephone number to reach our program, 736-0300. That's 736-0300. It's 925. My daughter is a hardworking kid. She doesn't necessarily, goof off. She's very serious about life. She's got some talent. She's graphic talent that is probably akin to many people who are currently working on Madison Avenue. And yet, finding a job in this day and age is not easy for a young person like that, with her background, her ethnicity. And I'm telling you right now, why shouldn't we be PO'd? There's a question. Why? Tell me why. Why we should just say, all right, you know what? We'll let our children and grandchildren starve if that makes you feel any better. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on KLIX. Hello. All right. Thank you, too. 736-0300. That guy's so angry he couldn't even speak about it. He had to hang up. And you can email me at bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. Meanwhile, the Republican Party, the guys who sit around Washington smoking all the cigars and trying to run our lives, they are very, very angry. This is Britt Hume speaking with Bill O'Reilly. Hume trying to explain that they're worried that if Donald Trump gets the nomination, Hillary Clinton will be the next president. How she ever governs from Leavenworth, I don't know.
Is that the prevailing wisdom among the elected Republican?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about it.
Yeah.
They don't want this guy, and they don't want him for two reasons. One is they don't think he'd be a good president, but probably more than that, they're terrified of an enormous Hillary Clinton landslide if Trump is the nominee.
But all the polls say that Trump is running very competitive with the secretary, sometimes beating her head to head.
Yes, but the polls say some other things as well that are revealing. For example, Trump's negatives, in other words, the number of people, the percentage of the people that view him unfavorably. It's plus 24. He's 24% favorable with Republicans. Minus 27% with independents and minus 70% with Democrats. We're now about less than a week into the beginning of a real attack on him by his Republican competitors and by a full-out advertising campaign. This is just the beginning. When you think about, what he's like and the things he's said and the positions he's shifted and the business ventures he's been in that didn't turn out very well and the bankruptcies and all that, he is a target-rich environment. And I think that by the time the media and the Democrats, not to mention the Republican attacks that are going on now, are finished with him, his numbers won't be anywhere near like that.
I don't know about that.
4 dead in Benghazi, Libya. And yet Trump, his negatives and oh my gosh, Bill, it's going to be awful. It's the end of the world. 4 dead in Benghazi, Libya. And emails that were picked up by the Chinese and the Russians because she wanted to use a server in a basement or a bathroom or wherever it was. You're up next. You're on the air on KLIX.
This has probably gone from the most exciting Republican primary season to the most depressing. I can't believe how many people are falling head over heels for Trump. You cannot tell me one thing that Trump has done to prove anything that he said.
But here's the thing.
And you also can't tell me anything that he says that Cruz isn't saying other than hateful things and mudslinging. Cruz has done all the things that Trump said he's going to do.
All right, so why aren't people identifying with Cruz?
That doesn't make sense. Why would you go for somebody who hasn't proven himself? He's only proven himself to be a hater. I mean, really, that's the only thing that delineates him from Cruz.
I prefer to be voting next Tuesday for either Rand Paul or Bobby Jindal. The problem is they needed personality transplants, and they don't seem to understand that you've got to be a salesman in this day and age, in the television, radio age, internet age. One of these other Republicans going to get the idea that you've got to be able to have some panache.
But are the American people really that naive that they actually think that a personality matters more than anything else? We're living in the time of Kardashianville.
I've got 200. I got 200 channels to choose from. I've got millions of internet websites to look at.
And all we're worried about is entertainment.
Well, I got to be honest.
We're losing our country.
Well, wait a minute. Then maybe the other candidates ought to be able to learn. We've only had television around for 60-some years. We've had radio around for not quite 100. The internet's now, 25 years old? Get with the program, guys. For crying out loud, if Trump can understand it, some of these other geniuses should be able to pick up on it, too. Thanks for the call. Bill Colley with you. One more half hour of the program left. That's a great call, by the way. 40. And we've got plenty more coming up. In fact, some on this topic. Also, speaking of the girl who may be going to Leavenworth, Hillary Clinton.